Hi, this is Ken Adams, and welcome to this edition of the Valley View. And I'm joined this week by Greg Fabos and Brian Hines. And we're going to talk a little bit about development here in Salem. And in particular, you're a homeowner in the Cinnamon Hill area or development. And there's a new development going in behind you. And so maybe you could kind of describe how long you've been there at Cinnamon Hill and what it's like, and kind of describe where it is too, so our viewers know what we're talking about.
Okay. Cinnamon Hill area is off of Sunnyside, south of Reese Hill, out in very south Salem. I've been living out there since about 1984. The new development is replacing what was an area that was zoned agricultural, and it was a Christmas tree farm. It's been annexed into the city and then also zoned residential at this point. And the planning stages for this development have been going on for maybe 4 or 5 years now. They began construction of the development this year, this March. And what has happened is, although the citizens have had some input when they put the plans together, the area was originally going to be small lots, many small homes, about 130 or so. The plans have changed without really notifying the neighbors, because there was no meeting or there were no public hearing on changing the plan from keeping the lots the same size, small lots, but going to very large homes, 2- and 3-story homes. And what they have done, there was some effort by the neighbors which was successful at preserving some white oak trees. Although, to get that concession from the developer, we had to agree, as a neighborhood association, we had to kind of agree that we would not pursue and question this development any more than we were worried about the impact on the Cinnamon Hill neighborhood. And they were going to say, well, maybe we'll save the white oak trees. And we put a petition together and we said we really would like those white oak trees saved, because they are a conservation valuable tree in the Salem area. So what they said is, okay, you guys stop your complaining, you stop asking questions about what we're going to do with this development, or we'll cut the trees down before you have a chance to even take any other steps. So it was take the trees and forget all your other issues. We went along with that because we thought, well, that's going to be the best that we're going to get. What has happened, and the biggest concern that we have right now, is the way that they have changed the natural slope and elevation of the land from the Cinnamon Hill elevation and land slope to the new development. Behind our home, behind my home and the home of many of my neighbors in the first phase, what they've done is they have built and put 4 to 5 truckloads of fill and dirt in. They have made it a 3.5 foot immediate gain. 3.5 right behind there. And I almost kind of was joking with the builder, and I said, I really hope that none of the people that buy these homes have any little children, because they'll fall right off, beyond the fence, and you'll never see your little kid again, because it was so drastic. As they are going east with this development and continuing phase 1 and moving into phase 2, the elevation gain is even greater, to the point where my next door neighbor to the east of me, he had a fence, a regular 6-foot fence. When we met with people from the city, and that was, by the way, very tough to get any cooperation from the city, to get anybody to even come out. And the only way I could get any kind of satisfaction, after calling planning and public works and being bicycled around the city office, well, no, that's not my job, that's not my job. Finally, I found out that Chuck Bennett was the mayor-elect, and I called him and told him pretty much what I've just said, and 2 days later, bingo, I had a phone call, and people were going to come out and take a look. As we were standing on the development, the city people from planning and public works and myself, the builder saw us out there, came running up the property and said, "What are you guys doing here?" And the people from the city said, "We're just looking at the development, and we have a neighbor who has some concerns." At that point, he shouted out, "I can have you all cited for trespassing." And I said, "Are you kidding me? You know, these are city people here, and I'm a homeowner, and we've got a couple of issues." So, and the main issue was this elevation gain.
Right.
Because of drainage, what had been a normal flow of water was going to be abruptly changed. To just go a little bit off on the trespassing issue, 2 days after the city people were out, I got a registered letter in the mail from the developer that warned me of the penalties of trespassing, the severity of the issue, and that if I put so much as one more foot on their property, I was going to be arrested and taken in for trespassing.
Wow.
So that's been the whole tone of the development. But I just wanted to,
I wanted to ask you now, Cinnamon Hill. You know, you're talking about these homes being built behind you that are 2 and 3 stories. Now, what is the normal? Is it 1-story or 2-story homes in Cinnamon Hill?
Cinnamon Hill's 1.
1 story. So you're going to have
story.
You're going to have these big homes behind you.
We already
on an
have
elevated, and they're 2 and 3.
Correct.
So
and
they can see right in your backyard and in your house.
We are buying blinds as we speak, because I mean, and then they put a deck outside of some of these homes. And these people are going to, I mean, we can, if I've got a picnic or any kind of family gathering, they might as well be invited because they're looking right in. I mean, if I'm making hamburgers, I might as well ask them if they want some. I mean, it is in our face, and almost to the point where it's within code of how close they can be to a property line, but right there.
Well,
right there, and it's going back the same way, Ken. The point that I was making when I was speaking to the builder with the city people there, they said, "This is natural elevation gain," and I said, "Are you kidding me? Look where you're standing. Look behind you. We are at the height of my neighbor's fence." So I mean, it was maybe there 5 feet, maybe 6 feet. To the lot, and it continues to go. I've been walking there, risking trespassing, and it goes where the neighbors had fences. It is to the top of their fence level, so that is significant elevation gain. That is our main issue, because then at that point these homes are going up, and it's a 35-foot maximum height for a home from elevation. From what elevation? From the new elevation, not the existing elevation. So those homes are going to be 40 feet and up.
More. Yeah.
And they continue, as they continue to go east in this development, Saber Ridge as it's now called, they're building them higher and higher. I think the newest one that's going up behind my neighbor to the east is a 3-story. And all on these small lots with a lot of fill dirt dumped in there. And Brian has been contacted by one of the neighbors even farther east, and he can tell you about that. But and we've got pictures. It is development gone wild.
And they don't want people asking questions about the development. And one of the things I'd like to bring out is that I was at a city council meeting when they were talking about a development over off Liberty Road that they were proposing some like apartment buildings that were 3 stories tall on the, I believe it was the north side of the development, and there were 1-story homes on the other side of development. And the city council made them go back and do it so that only 2-story buildings were next to that the previous development, and if they wanted 3 stories, they were going to have to be on the other side where there was like a Walgreens or something of that nature.
So it would blend in with the
Well, I mean, it
existing
wouldn't be
neighborhood.
so
Yeah, right.
it wouldn't be so intruding,
Right.
and also they wanted trees then, so that they wouldn't be looking in somebody else's apartment or whatever.
Correct.
So the city has done that in the past. They will enforce those kinds of things when it affects the current homeowners. So I wanted to bring that out because that is something that I've seen happen at city council meetings.
The main thing that has changed is the elevation gain and the large homes. I have no recollection of getting any notice in the mail from the city that there was a hearing to totally change what the original plan was for the smaller single-story homes when they announced this development in the first place. And there was nothing, and I've been trying to get a hold of, I've got, the multi-tech plat map here, but here it's still called Cinnamon Heights. I've tried to get the latest one that's been approved by the city. Multi-tech has refused to give it to me. They said, call the city. I called the city, and here I go again in the soup. I had
You go all
around the circle. No one's got it, and finally they say, well, go online, and it's going to take a couple weeks to get it, and then I've got to get each lot number, and I've got to get the address of each specific lot. That should be something that should be given to the residents of an adjoining neighborhood just as a common courtesy. And I really don't even know which is accurate. But nowhere in the original plan was anything mentioned to the Cinnamon Hill people about this drastic, and I really mean elevation difference.
And this is with fill. So that's not necessarily stable ground.
Correct.
And so it could be washing into your yard and possibly into your home.
It's already started farther
It
east
has.
of us.
Oh, it has.
Yes.
Well,
Whereas-
that's
We've got, proof of that.
yeah. My involvement as a blogger was Lisa Basalto wrote to me after reading some of my posts about city screw-ups and how the city favors
Certain developers.
people. Well, yeah, the wealthy and well-to-do, the powers that be over ordinary citizens, which are seen reflected in Greg's story. So Lisa isn't feeling well, so Greg is taking her place. And I wrote about Lisa's story on my Salem Political Snark blog. So the whole story is there. I called it Salem Subdivision Gone Wrong, City Staff Ignore Horrendous Screw-Ups. And most of the blog post is just what Lisa wrote to me. And it echoes, exactly. She's a homeowner which is farther down the way in the subdivision.
Or in this case, farther up.
Or farther up, yeah. Yeah, you can see on the blog post her elevation gain right behind her house.
Is
And
closer to
probably
about
won't show
20
up,
feet?
but we have, like she calls it 20 feet. It's just like a hill. And again, this was a surprise to her. And she's been sent me the 2013 plans that the city approved, and then has been asking the city, just like Greg has, where are the altered plans? How did it change, from a flat subdivision with these, modest homes to something where it just goes up and then all of this gigantic amount of fill? And in her case, during the heavy rains recently, a few weeks ago or a month ago, it eroded. And she had a flooding through her backyard into her crawl space. I mean, it was just like a river. She has videos, one
Really
of which I
flowing.
shared on my blog post. And she goes to the city, and she got an environmental person to come out, and they said that it was I'll quote her, "We called Salem Public Works, and an environmental compliance officer came out and said, this is one of the most egregious cases of lack of erosion control he had ever seen. He said the city is notoriously flippant about addressing erosion and more concerned about rubber stamping every proposed development." And so I found that one of the most telling quotes in Lisa's message, rubber stamping every proposed development. I mean, what we're seeing here, and this is echoed in a Salem Weekly piece which came out, interestingly, at almost exactly the same time Lisa told me, in the current issue, which is on the streets, repeated favoritism claim for local developer. And here's the story of a West Salem subdivision, which is in the path of the third bridge, and it's the same thing. He tries, E.M. Easterly, the person who corresponds to Greg and Lisa, has been trying to get information out of the city, you know, and they just won't talk to him. I mean, his quote, which I included in the blog post, is, efforts were made to answer my questions, he says, until such time that staff sensed my questions were challenging their official view, and then they just shut up. And Lisa's been told, she asks questions of a planner, and then he finally just says, don't call me anymore, I don't want to hear from you. And I just find that really disturbing, because most people think that when you go in, say, that the city should be treating people equally. But in this case, it's like Animal Farm, that some animals are more equal than others, and if you're a rich and powerful developer that also just happens to contribute to political campaigns of, say, the elected officials in Salem, you get, or anybody, you get different treatment than ordinary citizens who call with concerns. And you would think that the city staff would be playing the game equally, but as we've seen in Salem, and we could give many other examples of this, it isn't being played equally. The rich and powerful get their way on subdivisions, and the citizens, to put it bluntly, get screwed.
Well, we do have a rather recent example at Creekside, where the city council person wanted a break given to Creekside Golf Course for irrigating water. And so he stepped up and tried to get something done, and now the city council finally did vote it down because they got so much, I think, pressure on it. But the thing is that isn't Councilman McCoy also your councilman?
And he's invisible.
He won't talk to you on this issue?
No, he's no one from the neighborhood really has even called him. We had a councilman prior to him that had nothing to do with us, and I can't even remember that councilman's name, to be honest with you, but this was 1 or 2 years ago when we tried working through the council, and we got short shrift. We got no phone call back. We were ignored. We went to the council chambers to make a presentation on this development, and the councilman didn't even talk to us. Even after we spoke, he just walked out the door at the end of the meeting and never even came to acknowledge us. There's a real negative feeling of what is happening within Salem, and I've been here a long time, Brian, and it used to be a nice, well-run city with, I felt, good concern for the citizens. Right now, it's at loose ends. No one is stepping up to the plate to represent the concerned citizens, and it's flipped over to the advantage or benefit of the developer. West Salem used to be pretty scenic and an idyllic little place, and what they've done there is almost a carbon copy of now what is happening in South Salem. It's overdevelopment on very small lots, very big homes, no trees, not much landscaping, and an attitude on the part of the builder and the developer of superiority, and this is the way it's going to be, tough break, take it or leave it. And that's how we really feel in the Cinnamon Hill area. And 4 of my neighbors along Cinnamon Hill Drive have put their homes up for sale. What they've done is they're changing the whole character of the Cinnamon Hill neighborhood at our demise, really. I mean, it's not giving us any sense of
a community.
Yeah.
Well, what is the reason for this elevation change?
One question I asked the builder on that, he said, well, he's doing it because it's actually cheaper to build those homes because they're continuing to build it up as they go south and east. So for this first phase, and so it's in step with the rest of the increased height of the elevation, he won't have to build a little dip in the driveway, or those homes will all be raised up to the level of what they're raising the entire development up to. And I don't know how that got approved.
Yeah.
Where it's just not along the boundary of the Cinnamon Hill area. They've raised the entire development
thing.
up.
That's right.
And to top it all off, Ken, that's phase one. You can see, maybe if you were out there, Brian, the next phase, or phase 5, or whatever it's going to be, they've even raised it up another 10 to 15 feet. And
So
that
what
is
you-
not
right.
what was there before.
And I'm not an expert on this, but when you're building on fill, you're going to have foundation problems. At least that's my
Eventually.
understanding.
Yeah.
So these are
An
very
earthquake,
expensive.
You have big problems. I would
Yeah,
think.
these are very expensive homes being built on fill. I mean, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense from a layman's
You know,
view.
I think what they've done, I never saw them dig into the ground to put the foundation. So I think what they've done is, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but from observation, they've put the foundation on the existing subsurface.
Okay.
But then they've raised the foundation. It's kind of a joke among the Cinnamon Hill folks. These homes have got 6 feet or more of crawl space above the foundation. So they're not building the home and the first floor within a foot or two of the foundation. They're raising the crawl space 6 feet or more above the foundation. Even though the home has been built, maybe the foundation on the regular ground, that's where the fill comes in.
Okay, so what are they doing to keep water out of this area then? I mean, into these homes? Because you have to have something to
A
keep
stormwater plan. There is a
Well, yeah.
stormwater plan in the original plans,
But
but
if-
obviously it didn't work for
But
Lisa.
if you've got fill right up against, this space,
Yeah.
where you've got concrete foundation, water's going to seep in to these areas, unless you've built.
Or run into Cinnamon Hill.
Yeah, well, that'll be the
Obviously,
other.
eventually it's going to go. We've been told by the builder that it's been all, and by Public Works, this has all been engineered. And they're going to have from, I think, the home east of mine, one door away, all the drainage is going down to Sunnyside. It's been said that way. And the other way, it's all going toward Lisa's home, the other direction, and there's supposed to be, or there was supposed to be, some retention pond there, and that has been taken out at this point at the expense of additional lots for building. There is also a farm home, one of the original farm homes, at the very back of this development, not annexed by the city. And these people had access on a driveway running right along Cinnamon Hill out to Sunnyside. The builder said, we don't have to preserve that, and that's what they really done too. That's the 3.5 feet outside of my property. They just filled right over that road.
So how do they get out now?
So these existing farm home residents have got, they
Full
built like an
driveways,
access road, a gravel access road into the new development.
through the subdivision.
So they have them
and
going
now
through the
around the
subdivision.
They'll have to go through the subdivision now, but
To get out.
to get in and out.
But what it used to be, there was a dip from this farmhouse down, and then it came and then toward the Cinnamon Hill area. They are going to fill that big dip in where they had the flooding problem.
Yes, right.
They're just going to
Fill it,
put
that's what I've heard. Yeah.
15 or 20 feet more of fill in there, so that the folks farther along Cinnamon Hill from where my home is are even going to have a greater, I call it cliff. It's going to be a lot more than 3 feet or 6 feet as they go back.
So to kind of summarize, this is a complex story, and Greg knows it more than us.
And I'm
sure
pretty
it's,
passionate
it's
about
somewhat
it.
confusing to people, but to me, just hearing it for the first time, like you are, Ken, I mean, what struck me the most was just this lack of transparency and lack of responsiveness to citizen concerns. I'll let Lisa have a paragraph word. This is what she said in her message to me. Work on the development started in April of last year, and it's been an uphill battle with the city and the developers, Mountain West, Multitech Engineering, and Wind River Homes, to get any kind of information what is happening. The only plans that are on file with the city are out of date and are not being adhered to, but when we contact the city, they shrug and re-refer us to those same plans. And again, that's echoed in the Salem Weekly story. And the other thing that struck me, and you've alluded to this, when I went and looked at the development, and you walk up and you get over that, in Lisa's case, like a 20-foot slope, and you see this totally flat area with no trees, whereas before it was sloping, because you drive up through the Cinnamon Hill neighborhood and there's twisty little streets and there's old, gigantic, beautiful trees that have been left. And here it's just flat with nothing. And as you see on this plan, I mean, it looks like what the idea is that they just made it flat. So now all the roads can be perfectly straight, a boring subdivision,
Very
small
boring.
lots, whereas before you had this beautiful, unspoiled
You can see the elevation
territory.
changes in this.
Well, you can see it. Yeah, when I looked at on the first plat map, you can see the elevation changes, all the contours, and those contours have been eliminated in order to make an easy to build, profitable subdivision. But the whole character of the neighborhood, you think any place, if this was Lake Oswego or some place that, with another high-end place, but that had more of a sense of design and creativity, they would have left the trees, they would have had winding roads, they could have charged more for the homes, but instead we get this cookie-cutter development on what was a beautiful, unique, natural 30 acres or more in the heart of Salem. And so the other thing is, just from the lack of responsiveness, is just the lack of guidance and creativity among city staff and our developers to make something Salem just, ugh, it's like another, yeah, it's okay, but it could have been beautiful and wonderful. And
Well,
for some reason, Salem is just accepting this mediocrity and the profit motive. And in the long term, that isn't the way that we're going to prosper as a city, because the city is going to prosper when it's special and when people that can afford to live anywhere want to live in Salem because it's unique. And it just bugs me as someone that has push my Facebook page, Strange Up Salem. I want to make Salem strangely marvelous, not cookie cutter boring. And this is going to be a subdivision that isn't going to make you go, wow. It's going to go, eh.
When we first saw these plans that were put together, Cinnamon Hill folks, because of what you said of the character of that neighborhood, said, this doesn't blend in at all.
No.
Right.
And don't you think you could redo this, just like you said, and put some nice curvy roads and make it a part of Cinnamon Hill, some kind of a blending? And they said that's the way it is. They didn't care, and the city didn't care either. That's where you get the idea.
This leads me to the conclusion that, and one of the reasons why these people don't want to, in the city, don't want to talk to homeowners and like that, is because they're getting pushback from higher sources.
I think so.
And I think so the tone is set at the top. And these people know that this isn't a good situation, and they have no real explanation. So that's why they don't want to say anything, because anything they might say could come back from above them and give them a hard time.
Right.
But that's my view of things. And
Well,
we also were, I believe, at a city council meeting where a fairly recent homeowner who just moved over to West Salem was finding out that he was on the path to the third bridge.
Right.
And now his home is going to be devaluated. It might be
Demolished,
It might be demolished.
Yeah.
And this was somebody that was planning on retiring. Right. And basically he was given short shrift in the council meeting. They didn't bother following up with that, as far as I could tell. So this seems to be a regular pattern, which is what you're kind of.
Well, yeah.
It's not just
I agree.
old homeowners, it's current homeowners who have just maybe bought a property that is now not going to be worth anything.
Right. Well, I'll
Lisa was not
Go
even
ahead.
told when
Right.
she bought her home 3 years ago.
No, that's right. That's crazy.
Yeah. So we're going to have to wrap
go ahead.
up.
Yeah,
So, but I think this is an issue we're going to have to come back to, and maybe when Lisa's feeling better, we can maybe have some video
it's
to go
not
with
over.
it.
Right.
So I want to
Good
thank
idea.
you for joining us here on the Valley View, and join us next time.
Thank you very much.